Welcome to the session on AdblockPlus. I'm Jonathan Weber, the Global Technology Editor for Reuters, and I'm very pleased to introduce this session with Ben Williams of AdblockPlus. As many of you know, ad blocking is one of the more controversial phenomena in the internet world these days. I think that this company would be considered public enemy #1 by a lot of publishers who feel that ad blocking is simply taking away the revenue stream and creating all kinds of problems. Flip side being that a lot of consumers don't like to see all those ads all the time. So this company is certainly kind of right in the teeth of that particular argument, which pervades the ad-supported online media business right at the moment. So we'll be very interested to hear his comments. Ben?
Hello. As Jonathan rightly said, we are indeed public enemy #1 for a lot of people out there, especially publishers. Hopefully you're not one of them. Actually, maybe, to be honest with you, hopefully you are, because what I'm going to be talking about today is how ad blocking, and particularly the company that I work for, AdblockPlus, has really changed the way that we look at online media. And I think, without being too bold, it's okay to say that what we have done with AdblockPlus is actually given a little bit of power back to consumers or users of the internet. It's my belief, it's our belief, that consumers and users started the internet, and that at the end of the day, when a lot of this shakes out, consumers and users will be able to have the internet again. Tools like ad blockers, like AdblockPlus, allow them to do that because it puts the power of the internet back in their hands. But I'm also going to say something in a few minutes now that may surprise a bit of you, and that's that ad blocking actually didn't develop in the perfect way. It's still developing. And we are at the forefront of trying to make ad blocking turn a corner and go into a place where some ads, but not all ads, can actually be seen online, and that advertising actually improves. But, to kind of loosen things up here, I want to show a quick video, and then I'll jump back in.
Hi, what can I get you?
Can I get a lot?
Congratulations, you won.
Sorry about that. Do you recommend the... Sorry. Sorry, it's a problem. It's all over the place, all the time. I'm sorry. Give me a second. You know what? I've changed my mind. I'll get a mocha. I'll get a mocha instead.
You don't have to deal with pop-up ads in real life. You shouldn't have to on the internet either. Get AdblockPlus. You won.
So, how many of you have ever felt like that before? Anybody, when you're using the internet? Have you ever been trying to do what you want to do and you can't do what you want to do because of ads? Happens all the time. But before we get into the nitty-gritty bits of it, I want to kind of tell you where ad blocking's at today and sort of the the state of the art. So let's start out with someone that you all know very well, Mr. Edward Snowden, what he said about ad blocking. He said it's not only a right, but it's a duty. So let's unpack that a little bit, right? So why would ad blocking ever not be your right? Why would that ever be something that someone would question? But actually, in point of fact, it is being questioned right now. The company that I work for has been sued now 6 times by some of the biggest names in German media. If you've ever heard of Axel Springer, if you've ever heard of ProSieben, Sat.1, and many of the other big German publishers, you've heard of people who don't send me Christmas cards. They are suing us right now. The good news is we've run every case, 5 of them so far, that's gone to court. So it seems as if this is something that even the courts would agree is your right. But then he also goes further and he says that it's your duty. So what exactly does he mean by saying that blocking ads is your duty? Is it something you should do when you engage with the internet? I mean, surely, as we just saw in the video, it can't all just be about annoyance. If that were the case, some people may not be annoyed by all the ads they see. Some people may actually enjoy them. So why would it be a duty? Why would people actually block ads? Well, we know they're annoying, right? We've all been disturbed by ads online. How many times do you go online and go to a web page and you see an ad that pops up in front of you, that overlays the content, that hugs the content? Or how many times have you been annoyed on Facebook by all those suggested posts? How many times have you been annoyed by the 30-second video you have to watch in order to watch a 20-second piece of content? These are why people find ads fairly annoying out there. And they developed in this way. But they also block ads because there's dangers out there. It is a dangerous world. It is a dangerous internet. And one of the biggest dangers right now is called malvertising. Now, you'll notice, all of you, that's a lovely English amalgam of the words malware and advertising. And malvertising, if you didn't know, is basically an ad that's been injected with malware. And sometimes all you have to do to get malware on your computer from that ad is scroll over the ad. That's it. And suddenly, boom, you're infected. So malware is actually malvertising, excuse me, is a growing problem. It's grown by 3% from 2014 on to 2015. So another reason to use an ad blocker is because if you're blocking the majority of the ads or if you're blocking all the ads, then you stand a better chance of not getting infected. Tracking. Some people don't care about tracking. Tracking is the thing that happens online when advertisers will try to build profiles about you and then put those profiles, or send those profiles to advertisers so that advertisers can send you ads that they think are better suited to you. Some people think that ads like that are just fine. Other people think they're creepy as hell. If you think they're creepy as hell, then one of the things you can program your ad blocker to do is to block the tracking scripts out there that are building these profiles about you. It's just another thing that you can do after you uncover or unpack what is actually inside your ad blocker. Data costs. This is a fairly new one because right now, mobile is fairly small with ad blocking. It's been thus far a desktop phenomenon. But it's growing on mobile, and as it does, people realize that when they're downloading ads on their mobile connection, they're actually downloading data. And what does data do? Data costs you time, and data costs you money. So if you're not downloading the ads, then you're both saving money and you're saving time. Another reason to block ads. But, so we kind of understand why we want to block ads now. But as I said at the beginning, it didn't used to be this way. And in fact, this is the first ad on the internet that ever aired. It's lovely and beautiful and pixelated. Don't you just want to click on that? The thing about this ad is you would never guess who actually made this ad. This was October 27th, 1994, a day that may live in infamy forever, when the first online ad was actually published. And this is an ad for AT&T. AT&T is the second biggest telco in the United States. This ad aired on the precursor to Wired magazine, which is called Hot Wired. And the thing about this ad that's really curious is there's no branding on it. Have you ever seen an ad? Have you ever seen a Nike ad or an Adidas ad or a Beats by Dre ad? Have you ever seen any of those ads that didn't have the actual branding on it? It didn't have any mention of it. But as you see up there, no mention of it. Just this beautiful, Technicolor pixelated dream asking you to click on "You Will." Well, the thing is, the reason it didn't have that is because the web had been developed previously as a public good. The web was originally conceived as a public good. When the World Wide Web protocol actually started, the only people who actually used that protocol were universities. And as you may know, universities don't have much interest or use for advertising. Where you can see that even in the first ad is that AT&T, by their own admission, regarded this ad not as an advertisement, but as a public service announcement. Now, I don't know in Lithuania like how well that term is known, but I'm sure you have them. Public service announcements are the things that you hear when you're listening to public radio. So if you're listening to, say, a college radio station, you're going to hear a public service announcement telling you about cultural events that are going to happen in that town. Well, that's precisely what this ad did from AT&T. Even if you clicked on it, there was no mention of AT&T. It was basically saying, here's what's happening in your town. There's a museum that's opening up in your town. Maybe you should go check that museum out. So what we see by that is that even the people who started advertising on the net didn't regard it as advertising. They came into it regarding it as a free, open medium that was simply there for people to exchange information. And they wanted to jump into that exchange of information and start exchanging their own information. So it's very telling because we see that the internet did not develop before ads. It actually developed previous to that, and then ads came in later on. But this is what happened. This is what we have to look at these days, right? So, these are actually ads that I pulled off the internet, and I'm a terrific procrastinator, so I've been doing this for the last couple nights in my hotel room. But these are actual ads on the internet, and we see there a few usual suspects of what can be bad about ads. In the top left-hand corner, we see an ad that's just plain annoying. It's in my way before I want to see content. Right below it, we see the infamous belly fat ad. How many of those have we seen online? And how many people have actually ever engaged with that? And even better, how many people have actually ever engaged with that and then gotten value from it? Then up at the top, we see TMZ from the other day. This is the before the roll, so the before the roll content. And what you see at the top is a huge advertisement. I see mainly ad on that page before I get to content. And then at the bottom, you see something that's saying that the content can't be played and that I should log in or sign up for an account. Well, as all of you I'm sure know, you would never click on that ad because it's lying to you. It's duplicitous. It's going to bring you somewhere that you don't want to go and probably do something to your computer that you don't want to happen to your computer. So this is part of the place we found ourselves with ads. We aren't where we want to be. But how did we get here? How did we go from that very simple public service announcement that AT&T put out there about museums all the way to the slide I just showed? Well, as the internet developed, there were more and more annoying ads. Why not put more ads out there if you can? And let's not forget that advertisements developed in television to be precisely annoying. That was the entire point of an advertisement. Ads in the 80s, if any of you can remember back that far, they basically wanted you to remember the company. They didn't really want you to engage with it. Now we're in a time where people fast forward through ads on television, and many times they invest a lot into the content of those advertisements. But before, it was all about interruption, all about intrusiveness. This wasn't a big deal because, of course, on television, what can you do? You go to the fridge and get a beer. So you just ignore it if you want to. Unfortunately, online, you're not given that opportunity. So more and more annoying ads developed. In response to that, users ignored the ads, or they blocked them. Ad blocking started in 2006. I'll get into that in a little bit. But as it started, more and more people realized that they could block ads, and they, in fact, took advantage of the fact they were able to do that. If they weren't blocking them, then they were ignoring them. We've all heard the term probably banner blindness. Banner blindness just refers to the term that when you see ads online, you don't register them. They may as well be nothing to you. It's essentially just an empty spot up there. Think of the last ad you saw, and then tell me what it was. You probably can't remember it. So this is a problem for the advertiser, right? So what do? Publishers are getting less and less money for the ads. So they have to then produce more annoying ads. So we create here a rather vicious cycle that leads us to continually do the same thing. And this is the cycle that we found ourselves in for years. Even the Interactive Advertising Bureau of the United States said, and I quote, "We messed up." So they openly admit that advertising didn't develop in the way that it should have. But they also understand that we're in a bit of a quagmire right now. We're in a situation where it doesn't seem like there's a way out. So ad blocking helps, sure. You all understand that. We had a lot of hands that went up before in the crowd of people who are using ad blockers. So we understand that if you're blocking the ads, then that's going to help out your experience online. But does it help out for the entire online ecosystem? That's really the big question, is what you're doing when you're on an ad blocker helping the internet ecosystem. It's saving your sanity, it's protecting your privacy, it's protecting your computer's security, but is it good for the entire ecosystem? Well, again, it's good for you, because what does it give you? It gives you power. It gives you power back over the internet. These are all images, I think, of empowerment. And that's why I put them up there, because when you finally do use an ad blocker for the first time, you think, oh my shit, I've got my internet back. And this is a feeling that people have described to me many, many times. They say, oh my God, I can actually block that 30-second pre-roll ad on YouTube. Oh my God, I can actually block that big wraparound banner ad. So for users, we quite well understand that when they download an ad blocker for the first time, this is an empowering experience. This is something that they don't want to part with. But yet, we have to ask the question, as an ad blocker, is this the whole solution? Is this something that's good for the internet, or is this something that's merely destructive, merely disruptive without actually leading to anything new? But before we get into that, I have to tell you a little bit about us. Of course, full disclosure, I work at AdblockPlus. I'm happy if you download AdblockPlus, but there are plenty of other ad blockers out there. We are an open source product supported by over 200 volunteers. We are on every browser, and we are on mobile, so you can essentially get us everywhere. And we're fairly large. We have anywhere from 75 to 80 million users, over 500 million downloads, and we're generating 3 million downloads per week. So somewhere in the nature of like 10 million a month. 3 million a week is more than the population of this fair country, Lithuania. And it is proof that what a lot of people will tell you right now, that ad blocking is a fad or it's a flash in the pan, is not true. Ad blocking is a sustained thing. It's a sustained phenomenon. So it's something that we have to meet head on. That is to say, this genie of user control, of ad blocking, has gotten out of the bottle. And we're not going to be able to lasso that genie and pull him back in the bottle. Just like we can't lasso ads and pull them back in the bottle and pretend like that they don't exist. So again, we're in a bit of a predicament here. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what about journalism? We all like journalism, right? We all like things that are free online. Everyone likes free stuff. But journalism is a very important thing. In the country I come from, we call it the fourth estate because it keeps all the other estates in line. If you didn't have journalism, you wouldn't have a responsible voice telling you whether your government is being responsible or not. If you didn't have journalism, you wouldn't know whether people were actually stashing their money in a shady bank account in Panama. If you didn't have journalism, you wouldn't have a lot of the knowledge that people deserve. It's a very, very important thing. But it's not just journalism, it's also music. It's also art. It's also small blogs. It's everything in between. So what we have to think about is, with all of this quality journalism out there, what do we, how do we actually get it back? How do we fund it? How can we take journalism with ad blocking and make it better? And I've put up here, this is supposed to be funny, but it's actually a sartorial publication in the States called The Onion. But even The Onion depends on advertising. So this is fake news, funny news, but it's important stuff. It's stuff that I really like. It's stuff that I'd like to consume. But again, so is the stuff that your friends make if your friends are in a band. Not everybody's going to get a record deal, right? But occasionally people like to fund their habit, their hobby. And for those people, for all those free products out there, for the longer end of the tail, there needs to be some way where we can actually fund that. And up until now, funding has been done with journalism, or excuse me, with advertisements. Why? Because in journalism, we have to keep the lights on, right? There are great stories being written out there all the time. Just last night, I read a story on the death penalty. It was in the New York Times, and it was about that brutal practice we have in the country where I come from, unfortunately, of the death penalty. And it followed a couple of journalists, and they actually went to people who had been sentenced to die, and they interviewed them, and they talked about their experiences. Some of them actually had been saved at the very moment that they were approaching death. And it was a very enlightening article. It made you really understand how it was. It was very well done. There were cartoons to do it. They actually used it like a comic strip. It was pretty awesome. And so for your friend's band's website, and also for the big name publishers like the New York Times article I read last night, we have to keep the lights on. We have to make sure that there's some way out there where advertising can exist even in a world where users have control. So how do we do that? Well, I'll go back to this one real fast. The story of AdblockPlus is a fairly complicated one. We were the first ad blocker. We developed a decade ago in 2006 when a single developer took up moribund, a dead code, picked it up, and decided to make something new out of it. He made AdblockPlus out of the original ad blocking code, and we're quite proud of the fact that we are the originals. And we're also quite proud of the fact that the code that he made was very easy for users to put onto their computers and use. Ad blockers up to that point have been sort of the domain of the techies because they were very difficult to use. Well, when he did that, suddenly it exploded. This was 2006, and by 2011, this guy, Vladimir Palant, he's my boss, he had on his hands 30 million users. And this was a hobby. This was something he was doing in his spare time. His day job, he was working at the navigational company TomTom. So at night, he would come home and he would develop AdblockPlus. And over this period, over these 5 years, from 2006 to 2011, he realized that he had 30 million users on his hand. This presented him with two very distinct problems. The first problem was, of course, monetization. How do you develop something like this? How do you hire developers? How do you hire people on the business side to run this huge product if you're just doing it in your basement at night after you get home from work? And the product is completely free and will also stay completely free forever. So how do you monetize? That's the first issue. The second issue that Vladimir had is the fact that he started to feel guilty. Exactly what I was just talking about journalism. He said, ads fund the journalism that we see. And even if they can be very annoying at times, the web has not found another way to monetize other than advertising. So all of the free stuff that we really enjoy is out there because of advertising, and I, Vladimir, have 30 million users that are unable to be monetized. And if this grows, then maybe I'll kill the free internet. He didn't want that. And so he started to test different solutions. One of the solutions that he tested was basically trying to guilt people into deactivating their ad blockers on certain sites. He said, look, you visited this site, xyz.com, 20 times today. Why don't you consider deactivating your ad blocker on this site? Well, our users looked at him and said, Vladimir, that's a terrible idea. You just notified me of something, and that looks a whole lot like a pop-up ad. Stop it. Don't ever do it again. So that's another way of saying they said, that's shit. Don't do that. And so Vladimir went back to the drawing board, and he said, okay, users, I'm going to do a poll with you. If ads weren't so damn annoying, would you be okay with them? If somehow we could find a way to only show you ads that didn't intrude upon your internet experience, didn't intrude upon your content that you wanted to look at, to read, to watch, would you be okay with a certain type of ad? 3/4 of our users said yes. So he went about with our users trying to find criteria for better ads, and he called it the Acceptable Ads Initiative. And the Acceptable Ads Initiative was where we started to realize that, hey, ad blocking didn't develop in the perfect way, and maybe we as an ad blocker can do something to make it right. In a nutshell, acceptable ads just means that if your ads maintain certain criteria that we developed with our users, they can get through. Now, importantly, as a user, if you think that's a terrible idea and you want to block 100% of ads, you can do so just with one click. But what we found in 5 years of doing this is that only a very small percentage of people actually try to do that. It's really in the single digits. 8 to 10% of the people out there actually deactivate acceptable ads and say, no, I want to block everything. So for us, over the last 5 years, this has been a bit of a proof of concept that, hey, what we're doing actually has some merit. What we're doing could actually work. So that solves the one problem, is guilty conscience. But what about his other problem, the monetizing side? Well, he said, okay, I can't charge everybody on this list. We're doing a lot of work to whitelist your ads, to put them on our exception list, but I can charge the very biggest names on the list. So about 10% of the companies pay to be on this list for all the work that we put into it. And then that makes it free for the other 90%. So the criteria are very important. You can't bypass the criteria with money, but the criteria are also something that need to evolve. So Vladimir had his problems, or his solved basically at that point, but by 2015, by last year, we had more problems. And we realized that, if we want this to expand, perhaps we need to make ad blocking more nuanced, less of a baseball bat and more of a scalpel, more of a nuanced tool. But how do we do that? Because we're just one ad blocker. There are several other ad blockers out there. You may have heard of ad blockers like AdBlock, without the plus. Or Crystal, an ad blocker on iOS. These are other ad blockers that we wanted to, and all the other ones as well, that we wanted to say, okay, well, maybe if we make acceptable ads independent, then we can make it a standard for all ad blockers, or a standard for a lot of ad blockers. This would be a great idea. So we announced this last year, and we've been working hard this year to form a committee. In the future, this committee, composed of people like yourselves, people from the publisher side, from the for-profit side, as well as people from the nonprofit side, are going to decide what's acceptable and what's not in the future. So we think this is the next step. After 5 years of doing acceptable ads, we think that the next step in it is to make it independent, to hand it over to someone else. This is a way that we can scale this idea. This is a way that we can make this idea much more transparent. But that's not everything. There's still another problem to be solved out there. And this is a problem that goes back to the very beginning of the web. Before that first ad that I showed you at the beginning, before that ad even happened, there were conversations around the architects of the web to say, well, what could we do to fund the content online? Because we're going to eventually offer a lot of this for free, so what would be one way to fund that? And I've heard rumors, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard rumors that people actually considered putting a $1 key on the keyboard, like a $sign, so you could actually say, hey, I'm going to fund that. And don't laugh, we're talking about like 1991, 1992, things have changed. But in that time, we haven't found a way, an adless way, to fund the content that we love online. And this is, of course, based on very scientific research, this thing you see on the screen right now. But it's basically to say that, publishers have not really found a way out of this predicament, and it's not even their own fault. Because, if you're the New York Times, you don't collaborate with the Washington Post to share money. You've been competing for hundreds of years, or for a couple hundred years, so of course you're not going to just suddenly start sharing money. It takes someone from outside. It takes sort of a third way. And this is what we've been working on for the last couple years, is could there be an adless way to fund the content that you love online? Well, we're in Germany. We are in Cologne. You can see the little ABP logo up there in Germany, in Cologne. And we look north. We look towards Sweden. Do any of you know that icon up there? Does anyone know Flatter? Anyone ever heard of Flatter? Yeah? One guy in the back? Okay, a couple more. What about Pirate Bay? Anybody ever heard of Pirate Bay? More of those, yeah, thought so. One of the guys who did Pirate Bay, Peter Sunda, after he was done with Pirate Bay, he decided to redirect his efforts into Flatter. Flatter was essentially just this button that would appear below articles, and if you were a Flatter user, you could directly fund that article if you clicked on the Flatter button. And Flatter started in around 2010, and they had a couple of issues, and we're basically in 2013, 2012 looking to pivot the way they were doing things. And this is about the time that we started looking northward, and we started talking to Peter and the CEO of Flatter, a guy named Linus. And we said, Peter and Linus, can we do something together? Because you guys have the back end figured out. You figured out how to be a bank and collect money and then send that directly to publishers and to content creators. So we have a lot of users, and we're already in a lot of people's browsers. Maybe we could work together. And we fell in love, and it was wonderful, and we've been in love ever since. What we did was try to say, okay, what can we do with Flatter and with AdblockPlus? And we just announced this actually on Tuesday. We started a new product. That product is called Flatter Plus. And Flatter Plus aims at getting at the systemic issues that have plagued other funding platforms in the past. In the past, basically, they've made funding really, really difficult. You have to engage a whole lot with the content you want to fund, and you actually have to press buttons, you have to enter payment information. Sometimes you have to buy one article at a time. And we just, after talking to the guys at Flatter, we were just like, this isn't going to work. I mean, any feature is a bad feature if that feature is hard to use, right? If it's not implemented well. So we set about, trying to figure out how we might make this easier, make it simple, make it frictionless. And so what we think we found with Flatter Plus, what I'm pretty sure we found, is a revolutionary way to fund the internet. And we don't hope to replace ads with this. We live very much in the reality of the fact that ads will continue to fund the majority of content online, but they need a little bit of help. This would reduce our dependence on some of the more flashy elements out there that, frankly, publishers don't want to use, neither do advertisers. And this would allow us to actually give another third way, another stream of money to content creators online. So here's how it works very quickly. Flatter Plus is essentially going to be in your browser. You sign up for Flatter Plus, and you say, well, I want to spend 10 euros per month, right? And you enter your bank account info once, bing, boom, done. And then you just surf the internet like you normally do. Flatter Plus is actually working on an algorithm, and what that algorithm will do will look at your engagement with articles, with content, with music, and then send that in an encrypted way to the publishers in the form of money. So it's completely privacy friendly. There's no way that anything you do is personalized there. And at the same time, you don't have to do anything. So at the end of the month, your money is dispersed to the sites that you engage with the most automatically. So in this example here, we have a 3, 5, and 2 breakdown. But you could put any amount of money that you want after like $1 or €1 into Flatter Plus, and that money will then be dispersed based upon your engagement. Why is this better than all the other systems up to this point? Because it's frictionless, because it's easy, and it's automatic. You as a user have to do very, very little. So the plan right now is to eventually incorporate this into AdblockPlus and provide users with what we think will be like the missing link in funding content online. And as is usually the case with us, we're being fairly bold with it. We want to raise $500 million by next year. So if we don't make it there, I'm sure you'll all remind me of it next year. But by the end of next year, we'd like to raise $500 million for publishers. Is this a pie-in-the-sky number? Actually, no. Because all we'd have to do is get 10 million people to use it, and each of those 10 million people to donate $5 a month. $5 is the amount that Flatter has averaged since it's existed in 2010. And we have, as I said before, 70 to 80 million active installations of our product out there. So if just a few of our users actually convert, that'll be a big number. And we don't have very long to go to get to 500 million users. So we're very confident that we have something that can help the online ecosystem. And so I want to close with just talking a little bit about how all this comes together. As I said at the beginning, you probably may have been a bit surprised that I'm up here telling you that ad blocking developed in a way that wasn't ideal. But this happens with startups all the time. You see that the solution you have is not perfect, and you do something like Vladimir Pallant did in 2011, and you pivot. And then you see that your new solution, in that case acceptable ads, is also not perfect, and you change that by making it independent. And then you see that you need to do even more, and then you create something like FlatterPlus. So will all of this be the future of publishing and the future of online content and online monetization? I love it. I'd love to tell you I knew the answer to that, but I just hope that it will, and I think that it will. But I think we all have to remember that when we go out onto the internet, this is a place where you should always have control. So you should always use your ad blocker, you should always use your tracking protector, but you should always also remember that ads are keeping the lights on for people, and we have to find a way where we develop not only ad blockers in a better way, but we develop ads in another way. And that's all I got.
Thanks very much. Ben, we have time for just a couple questions if folks have questions. And I will start with one, which is that most advertising dollars on the internet these days goes to Google and Facebook. And so it's sort of a two-part question. First of all, from a technical standpoint, does ad blocking even apply when you're talking about in-stream ads in Facebook and on mobile? And secondly, with Flatter, like if someone spends a lot of time on Facebook, is a portion of that money going to Facebook? Because I think that people would feel that Facebook is not really in need of subsidy, probably.
Yeah, thanks. Good questions. I'll go in reverse order. The first answer is no. Facebook wouldn't get money. We don't want to fund platforms. What we want to do here is fund individuals. So we will have to work out how that works, and that's why right now you can sign up for FlatterPlus today. But we're going to be working that out in a beta with our users over the next couple of months. But no, the platforms are not the goal. The goal is funding the content creators. And then on the other question, it's true that ad blocking is mainly right now a desktop phenomenon. So it does block the it does block the in-stream ads if you're looking at Facebook on your desktop. But then when you're on your mobile device on a mobile connection on the Facebook app, it doesn't. But as I also said, it's a developing thing. Ad blocking is on mobile. So all these things are potentially hurdles that we can deal with in the future.
Great, thank you. We have one question over here. Go ahead, I'll repeat the question.
Do you have any idea, any data on how much the publisher will be able to get from a single user in a month?
Question was whether there was any data on how much an individual user could get in a month. An individual publisher could get in a month from this.
Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. You mean with FlatterPlus, I suppose, right? The sky's the limit, really. It depends on how many people join, and it depends on how much money that people use. But as I said, we do have a pretty good guesstimate because Flatter, even though Flatter was not completely frictionless as FlatterPlus will be, was able to get about a €5 average. So we think that that'll be the case. The interesting thing about it is that publishers do need to be signed up for FlatterPlus. And so the challenge really won't be, but we don't think the challenge will be getting publishers on board. The reason for that is that essentially we will be able to see if Flatters are going to no publisher, a publisher that hasn't signed up for Flatter yet. Say you flatter the New York Times €5. If the New York Times hasn't signed up for that, then your money would go back to you, but we would have data that somebody had given 5 euros to the New York Times. So over a month, if a lot of people had given a lot of euros to the New York Times, we could go to them and say, hey, guys, we've got this, $5 million check here, and why don't you just come get it? It's free money. And on the publisher end, they actually don't have to do anything except for take 5 minutes and sign up for it. So they have to put no tag on their page. They have to put no icon on their page, no button. It's just merely saying 5 minutes and free money. So, our thing is like, well, nobody would be that masochistic not to take free money, right? So hopefully publishers will sign on. So, yeah, thanks. Good question.
One more question? One more question in the back there.
You mean like with baseball bats? Oh, yeah.
Question was whether he'd ever been threatened by publishers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a small guy, but I'm not the guy who does the fighting at AdblockPlus. I got some guys behind me, they help me out. So, no, yeah, of course, we're not getting Christmas cards from publishers, as I said, but we have had situations that I'll just say are a bit uncomfortable with publishers because we seem to be going at loggerheads. But what we try to describe to publishers is that we're not against what they're doing. In fact, we want to work with them. And so when you go into what could be a very conflictual type meeting, but you go in and you say, look, guys, we understand that ad blocking is not a complete solution and we want to make it better with you, then they tend to change their tune. But I got to tell you, I mean, we've been doing this since 2011, and when I came on board in 2013, actually, it wasn't so easy, and we've gone to a lot of those meetings, and it's gotten a little easier in the meantime. So.
All right, great. Well, thanks very much, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.